Ladies and gentlemen, today Corvette World Rob and I review a 1996 C4 Corvette and discuss whether a C4 or C5 is a better purchase. Hello everyone and welcome back to Brink of Speed. Today I am very excited. I am headed to go meet up with Robert at Corvette World because they have a beautiful one owner 1996 collector's edition C4 Corvette with the LT4 motor in it, or engine in it. So I can't wait to go and show you guys this beautiful car. This is going to be the first time I've driven a C4 Corvette in a really long time. So I'm excited to drive it, especially because the last C4 Corvette that I drove was a 1984. So a full 14 years newer and a whole 110 more horsepower. That's something that's really amazing about the C4 Corvette is when they first started being produced, they had like 220 horsepower. And then the final 1996 production car had 330 horsepower. So I'm really anxious to compare this to a C5 Corvette. Just see what I feel is the major differences between the two Corvettes and let you guys know whether you should go for the C5 or the C4 if you're on the fence between the two. Real quick before we get started, thank you to my thumbs up squad for already smashing that thumbs up button. I hugely appreciate it. You guys are amazing. Also, thank you to my whole Brink of Speed community. I am right on the precipice of 50,000 subscribers and I can't wait to see that thing roll over to 50,000. So thank you guys so much. I hugely appreciate it. Also, let me know in the comments down below what you'd like to see as a 50,000 subscriber giveaway, because I do want to do a giveaway. I'd like to have suggestions from you guys, so let me know in the comments down below. If you're new to this community, please consider subscribing by smashing that red subscribe button and the bell for notifications when new videos are uploaded. All right, let's get into the video.
C4s, one of the complaints that they would alleviate the C5 is this right here.
Yeah, that's kind of a pain in the butt.
It is a cockpit.
It is.
You know, you see this well, it's deep. You sit by. Now, when you're in, you're in. You know, Viper guys know how this feels because Vipers are like this.
Yeah.
But yeah, C4 Corvettes, you're definitely in a cockpit. So if you're really of large stature, whether it be in height or size, you're gonna have a problem with this.
Sure.
Yeah, that's why a lot of people would prefer a newer C5 over that because it's so much easier to get in. You get a lot more space. Sure. You know, so. But styling, on the other hand, is highly debatable because, again, you know, the C4 styling changed a little bit. You know, some of the basic shapes changed, but there were cove differences. They changed the front end to a more rounded look, which debuted with the ZR1 in the back, and then you had in the front here in 91. So the C4's look did evolve a lot more than they had it. Like the C5's general look did not change its entire generation. The same went for the 6 and the 7, except for the different platforms like Grand Sport or Z06. So the C4 is probably one of the last generations that you saw this much of an exterior change on your base level car without any special additions.
Sure.
Now this particular car, the collector's edition, is paying homage to 1982. They did a collector's edition for the end of the C3. Now C3 had a very long run, 68 to 82. That's a long time. So this was kind of paying homage to that. And back then in the 90s, they didn't have trim level breakdowns like they do now. You know, 1 LT, 2 LT, etc. So when you bought a collector's edition, you were essentially getting a fully loaded Cooper convertible. The only difference was whether it was an LT1 or an LT4 power plant.
Okay.
They all the collector's editions came standard with the ZR1 style wheels. But unlike the Grand Sport, which shared the line at this model year, they were still in the normal 245 front and 275 rears.
Okay.
Whereas the Grand Sport was the larger
305 or 315.
Or 315s in the rear. Excuse me.
Okay.
Yep. Now let's get to what everybody wants to see.
Yeah.
One thing I always love about C4s: engine access.
Oh yeah.
Now it is a knuckle buster in there, but the reality is you've got a lot of access to this. So if you get this up on a lift and take a wheel off, I mean, you can really get down and out in this motor.
Oh yeah.
The one thing that drove everybody nuts, including myself, is where they put the battery. That is a pain.
What in the world were they thinking
Yeah,
here?
that was a bit of a pain.
Wow. You got to remove. Is that a horn?
Yeah. And this is your motherboard.
Good.
Yeah. So you had to move some stuff to get at the battery. So my advice is for anybody buying a C4 today, buy the best on the market, which would be an Optima. That way you ain't got to deal with it for a long time. Make sure you tender it if it sits for a while, because that is a lot of the work.
Yeah,
now, actually, you can also take off this side panel here to get to it. So.
Oh, okay.
But, again, a lot more work than you usually want to deal with.
Oh, yeah.
But, of course, the LT4. Now, again, that name was reused again in the C7 with the Z06, but this is where it started. The LT4, as I mentioned inside the car, is an upgraded variant of the LT1 that debuted in 92. There's a whole ton of articles out there if you want to read about the technical differences. I won't bore you with that right now. But again, the output was 330 horsepower with 300 and, if I remember correctly, 340 or 350 pound-feet of torque.
Yes.
Yep. Now, some believe it was underrated because the numbers these cars put up, especially in the Grand Sport variant, were just a hair shy of the earlier C4 ZR1s.
Wow.
So some think that it was actually underrated and probably closer to 370 horsepower.
Okay.
But we'll leave that. We'll let history judge that.
Sure, sure.
But again, very good power plant. The only other thing that really people complained about with this design of motor was the OptiSpark. Now, the OptiSpark is the distributor for these motors. It sits underneath the water pump. This is your water pump, and it sits underneath there. And what happened is when it got exposed to the elements, water, or God forbid the water pump went bad and it started bleeping on it, it would eventually leak into it and would cause all kinds of ignition issues. However, having owned a LT1 car before, I learned there's a trick to dealing around that, and that is nowadays if you goop up and seal everything up with waterproof grease, and including on all your spark plugs, drive it in rain and snow and everything else that the state of Illinois threw at me, and I had 100,000 miles on my OptiSpark and never had a problem.
Okay.
So it's not as bad as they make it out to be, but if you don't do the corrective actions, it could be a problem if, God forbid, you hit water and it gets in it, and then you got ignition issues. So
I got a question for you. Why does the engine say Grand Sport on it?
Because all the LT4s were designated with that Grand Sport plaque. But the great thing is you had companies like Mallet Billet Aluminum, or MBA for short, that would make all these customized plates, and people would have a field day with them. But they just did that because that motor was originally designated for the Grand Sport. Okay. But then GM decided to say, no, we'll make this as an optional engine for the mainline cars.
Nice.
It just wouldn't have the suspension upgrades that the Grand Sport got.
Sure.
So the Grand Sport was still the top performer,
yeah,
but at least the base car can still have the same straight line.
Sweet.
Now we're going old school here, so there's no way to open up the hatch from the back. So you have to go in the inside here.
By the way, if you like the round tail lights better than the squared off tail lights, leave that down in the comments below. Man, look at all that red.
Now I stuck the paperwork and our carpets in here, so we do have the carpets. You can see they're originals and they're still in really good shape. Now you did have some storage back here. You see you have your spot for your target top.
Yeah.
The target top does come off, and you can put it. It's set in the back here and locked right here. You also have an extra storage area right there, and it lifts up, and you got like a little cubby hole.
Oh, okay. Nice.
And at the time, this is when you know, they started using Bose sounds, but they were calling them Bose Delcos.
Oh, wow.
But the late C4s were your first with the Bose system.
Very interesting.
For the time, they were okay, but very, very easily upgradable if desired.
Okay.
Antenna was powered, and every time you turn the radio on, this would come up.
Sure.
The only thing you got to be wary of, don't open your garage part way thinking you're going to fit the roof of the car, because that antenna, which I'm going to show you, there we go.
There it goes.
As you can see,
yeah, it's a big difference.
It's about a foot.
maybe a foot and a half.
Yeah, and it's fully extended, so yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And this is a powered one, which, you know, back in the day, it is not cheap to fix if you busted it and broke it off.
That was an 80s thing originally, and
Yes.
then they started putting them in 90s cars.
Yeah, and the only thing
That's
is you had to keep them greased, because
Sure,
if you didn't
sure.
grease, yeah, I know, we're getting perverted now, but you'll get the idea. You grease it up so it goes up and down without getting stuck. You know, because that would happen when they don't. They go down and they get like right here and they would stop, and you'd have to push them in, you know, or the motor would go out.
Right.
So that, again, that was an 80s, 90s thing, but you know, the biggest thing is the clearance. You don't want to get it chopped off, because this thing does not flex very much.
Right.
So.
And then we've got the famous fuel tank here in the back.
Yes.
Which was a C4.
Which you had to be careful when you were filling it up. You had to make sure you didn't, if you went in like this, you could scratch your paint right here.
Absolutely.
Now keep in mind, we just got this. There is some paint defects on this car. They are going to be addressed. We've already got our paint expert who's going to be coming in and take care of this, so I know there are some scratches. Now here's a question for you, Mike. What about this lighting system differed from that of the ZR1 and the C4?
Well, when the C4 first came out, didn't it have round tail lights?
Well, yes, they did, but you remember, the C4 ZR1 when it came out, they debuted this style, the squared oval design, right? And then they bled that over to all the Corvettes in 91. Right. But, you see this here?
Uh-huh.
Where did the ZR1 have its center light?
Wasn't it higher up?
It was higher up. So, if you're ever driving behind a C4, if you see a tail light up here, you know it's a C4 ZR1.
Okay.
So the fakers out there, they would get the wheels, and yeah, they did exist. Back in the 90s,
absolutely.
I remember as a kid, we was like, oh, there's a CR1, we walk into the, oh, it's a fake. You know, it would happen more often than not. People would be faking and be buying ZR1 badges, slapping them on there, but you can always tell because ZR1s did not have that center brake light there. So,
awesome.
Little tidbit about that. One last thing, storage. Storage in the C4, obviously you got the back hatch area, but you also have door cubbies.
Very interesting.
Yeah. I wonder how many C4 owners never knew that.
That is, I mean,
I can tell you, back when we were getting more C4s in my earlier days of Corvette world, I would get in, I'd find paperwork in there from the early 90s.
Oh, I bet.
God only knows, they probably, the secondary owners never knew about that.
Right,
they just thought it was just an armrest the whole time.
And by the way, shout out to neighbor Mark, because these are something he would have in his C4. He has them in his C8 right now.
Yeah, again, just like the newer ones, they prevent, the marks and the carpet getting torn up when you're getting in and out.
Yeah.
Because it's almost impossible to not rub against that when getting in and out in this car. Bar here, push it in so it lines up. And just like the newer ones, you come from the middle. But this one, it's heavy enough, you can just let it drop. Give it a little safety tug and you're good to go. The headlights pop up. Unlike the C5, which just flipped up, these rotate.
Oh, yeah.
They hear that noise?
Yeah.
We've already got gears on order for that. Yeah, that's the thing. The gears are a little worn on this one. They will be replaced.
Cool.
But they do the rotate. They do the rotation. See that smile on my face, Mike?
I do.
You see what happens when you put me in a C4 with a manual?
Oh, yeah. Man, I love C4s.
I've said it before in old videos. It's his broken record, but I'll say it again. Where Mike's sitting was shotgun for me as a little kid. Awesome. First with my dad's 91 L98, then a 93 40th LT1, and then lastly a 95 ZR1. So what's nice about this one is the LT4, which we never had. Father got remarried his second wife, had a 96 collector's edition like this, but it was convertible with an LT1. So this one here being the LT4, of course, you can only get them in a manual.
That's good.
And again, this is one of the notable silvers in recent decades. You know, silver's always kind of been, you know, it's been there, but it hasn't been the standout color. Well, 96, this was one of the standout colors other than the Grand Sports red, white, and blue setup for the time.
I think this car was on Beverly Hills 90210.
Probably was at the time. That was one of the shows.
Yeah.
Obviously, my first time seeing an LT4 in action was a Grand Sport when I was a kid at the playground. I'm not kidding. I was literally at a local neighborhood playground, and this guy was test driving. I could tell he was with a salesman, and he decided to get on it. And I heard it, and ever since then I fell in love with that car. I was already in love with C4s. You know, you'll see in the video we did the cold start. As you can see, they're quiet. C4s are quiet, but what it is, they got a distinctive hum. And that's what the LT series in the 90s were known for. They had this signature hum. If you wanted the low growl, Borla made some real nice exhaust systems, and Corsa would later jump in the race with their own variant, which had a little bit of a louder note. But so there was plenty of alternative if you wanted the noise, but if you just wanted the nice, clean hum, because this generation of car, you know, isn't sound dampened like the old one, so you still get a pretty good amount of sound in the car.
Right.
Like I'm gonna give it a little gumption here on this light. As you can see,
that's even shifting at low RPM though.
Yeah.
What happens when you take it all the way to redline?
Well, I'm not going to do that because we have not serviced this car yet.
Okay.
I don't want to accidentally risk hurting something on the car.
Sure.
But, you know, just enough for the audience. You know, we're still going to do our routine here. We just got this car in. All we've done to it is a car wash. So it's going to go through our full service. This car is a one owner. The previous owner had passed. The family sold it to us. Very nice family. And we promised them we're going to find them a nice new home for this car. Assuming I don't win the lottery by myself. Just saying. But you know, so until we go through it fully, I don't want to get too hard on her, but I can tell you this much, you know, for not touching this car, and this being a one owner, you know, car that's in its mid-20s now, you figure, you know, this car is what, 26 years old now. It AC blows ice cold. It
does.
It still pulls very decently. You know, you definitely feel the 330 horse. It shifts beautifully. The only thing I'm a little questionable about right now is the brake feels a little slushy, and I think that's probably because it's due for a brake fluid exchange, which, given the age of the vehicle, they'll definitely have that. But other than that, I mean, it's immaculate. One thing that they resurrected with the C8 that I love about the late 90s, 94 through 96 Corvettes, and this was shared by another favorite car of mine, you know, the Caprice and Impala SS at the time, is the 2-point steering wheel. You know, you got this whole area here. Right. You can grip it, and I love, you know, what do drivers ed always teach you, right? You know, grip at the corners, right? Well, I like gripping at the 90-180 mark because I like this kind of control. Because when you're at high speed, it's there. You're not going to be doing. You're going to be doing this. Yes. Now I'm making some turns in this parking lot here, and the car feels good. I mean, for a car that's 26 years old. Sure. God, this car feels good. So, well maintained, 19,000 miles. Everything works. There's no gauges, clusters, lights going off, nothing. Interior's in immaculate shape. It is. And, well, Mike, I mean, you've had a C7. I mean, don't you feel like you're sitting just like a C7? I'll be at the well in the foot.
I was going to say, yeah, the big difference is the footwell.
Yeah, the foot space
forces you to have very little foot space. Yeah,
that's the only big complaint about C4s that they would definitely remedy in the C5. Sure. Was the foot space. So now the plus side of that is, I mean, this is one of the first Corvettes and still holds up as one of the Corvettes. You literally feel like you're in a cockpit. Now the C8 and the C7 to a lesser extent replicated that. In fact, the C7's layout is almost identical to this. If you notice it, the way they isolate the passenger. Oh yeah. This was again carried on by the C7 and now the C8. And the whole idea is everything's at your fingertips, just like a fighter pilot. You're in a cockpit, but the C4 is the one that really makes you feel like you're in one because you got to get in here and you got to strap in. And you got this cinch button here on the seatbelt you press to lock a fatty like me in here in place. But I'm gonna tell you, I like the cinch control because you lock it in. Look, it doesn't move.
Oh yeah.
So if you're gonna go race it, you're gonna not feel like you're rolling around.
Right.
I've read all the reviews on C4s going back to the early 90s, and never did I hear anybody complain about the floppy seats and not rolling around. I never heard that. The only thing I heard complaints about was, the usual stuff. Oh, it's the plastic, that stuff. But
sure.
Never heard complaints about the seats in the C4. So the LT4 was the pinnacle of the Generation 2 Chevrolet V8s. Obviously, they went to Generation 2 with the LT1 back in 1992, and the LT4 was essentially an improved LT1, is what it was.
Sure.
But when they came out with the C5 in 97, they went to the new LS motors, and of course LS has made a legendary legacy in itself. Now, one of the things that we learned with the design of the LS is you were able to get a lot more power and a lot more efficiency out of it. But again, all those lessons were learned from the Generation 2, because
right.
Again, we talk about Corvettes in the modern era. When did the Corvettes really break out into modernity? A lot of people say it's a C5. I argue no. It started with the C4. The C4 started out, being the first computerized Corvette in '84, and obviously those had a lot of glitches and issues early on. And then they switched from the Crossfire, which was a carryover from the C3, to the L98, which held until the 90s when they came out with the Gen 2 V8s. So the C4 saw a tremendous amount of technological advancement in its time. So I would argue, and you look at old vets versus modern vets, the C4 was the bridge, literally, because the C4 was the first computerized vet. It was the first to incorporate a lot of this newer technology, right, including adjustable ride control. Now, this particular car doesn't have it, but we take it for granted now with the mag ride. Well, that all started with a hydraulic setup that was available starting with the 1990 ZR1. So this is the bridge from the old to new, in my view, in a historical context. And who knows, now if they do an all-electric vet in a C9, then we'll look at the C8 as the bridge into the electric future, if they go that route, which, let's face it, there's a lot of us that don't want them to go that route yet. But we'll address that as needed.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for me to drive a C4 after over 20 years of not driving one. So here we go. Let's start it up. Yeah.
Now, one note about that OptiSpark I was talking about, at the time, it was the most advanced ignition system in the world. So for all the complaints about it, you can't deny how fast they start up. Yeah, so this is Mike's first drive, and not only in a C4 in 20 years, it's his first one in a modern C4, obviously in the late 90s and 780s. And this is obviously his first time in the LT4. So
the park says it's still on.
Okay, so all right, I'm glad you covered that. Okay, so with this parking brake, you have to pull up, get it up, and then depress the button while it's in the up position. Pull it up, feel some tension on it. Now push the button, and then push down. That releases it.
Okay.
Throws everybody off. Yeah, because you put it up and engage it, but then it's loose going down, so it's out of the way. But you have to pull it up, press the button, then to re-engage shift the brake cable.
All right, here we go.
Since Mike is driving, I'm going to cinch my belt. Yes, it is an older, longer clutch, just like you have a longer throw on this shifter.
And the brakes are definitely really long too.
Yeah, I've already made a mention to Keith about that when he works on it. We're gonna most likely gonna have flush that reservoir and make sure it's pumping properly. But it's got good torque.
Oh yeah.
You can feel it.
Yeah, it shifts really smoothly too.
Oh yeah. I recently, and he knows who he is if he's watching this video, one of our customers who showed up for Corvette Coffee let me drive his 93. And, that one was the LT one, smooth. I mean, you can definitely feel a difference in the power and the torque of the LT4 versus the LT1. There's no doubt about it. It is definitely punchier.
This is awesome, man. It's, you can tell it's older. It's got a little bit of a rougher ride, but it ain't bad. And
but isn't there like that? Doesn't it feel like you're more part of the car though, just in a more visceral way?
It definitely feels great, no doubt about it.
These train tracks. Woo!
Except for that one.
Yeah, train. You're gonna feel the bumps in this car.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. Not as bad as you would in that Grand Sport. Look at that.
Yeah, you got to think ahead when you're stopping.
Oh yeah. Yep. He did his own rev match. Mike rev matched himself. There you go. See, look at that. See, you can rev match yourself if you know what you're doing. See, there you go. So you've had an LT1 in the Camaro. Yep.
Oh yeah.
So this is essentially a cousin of that. And of course you've had the newer LT4. You know, so. Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, it goes really, really well.
Yeah, these cars here, now the Grand Sport, you can break into the 4.9 0 to 60 if you get a perfect launch. These cars here with the smaller tires, you can pretty much do, you know, 5.0 to 5.2 0 to 60 time. Sure. But again, it was still 170 mile an hour top speed.
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, it ran the quarter mile in the 13 range all day. I mean, very consistent. So
it's got so much torque.
Yeah, for what it is, for the power level, yeah.
So much torque.
Very good torque.
Feels excellent. Yeah, and you know, when there's not a lot of bumps, it's actually really smooth. So on a smooth highway,
yeah, it's cruising.
I mean, yeah, it's like a smooth cruiser. I like this a lot.
If my dad's watching this, yeah, hey, flashbacks, boy, this was a lot bigger when I was a kid. This side here was a lot bigger. My feet.
Yep.
But it's not that bad. You know, it's not that bad at all.
And I do like the way it sounds.
It sounds better. It's conservative on the outside, but it has a really good sound on the inside. Yeah. It's really a car that, you know, the driver can experience. That's what's so cool about these cars. Still just a good old V8 sound. That's the thing. I mean, just if you listen to the notes.
And as he said, you put a Borla on it, you put, you know, any type of aftermarket exhaust, and it's gonna wake it up instantly.
Oh yeah, big time.
You know, you're gonna hear I mean, just like on my 1995 Camaro, it was pretty quiet when I bought it, but then I had a aftermarket exhaust actually built for it, and man, it woke that V8 up, and it was so loud. It sounded so good.
Yeah, so we've had customers come in with the Corsa system. It sounds really good. Personally, for the C4, I like the Borla better because I like the deeper pitch.
Sure.
But I wish I could remember. There was another exhaust brand. It was out in the 90s. My father had it in his 93. It had a real loud hum.
Flowmaster?
May have been Flowmaster.
Flowmaster was popular.
Yeah, because Flowmaster, that's what I had on my Caprice. And that sounds really good too.
Oh, yeah.
But the one he had amplified the hum too. See, that's the thing. These LT models, or LT engines, they had a nice hum.
Yeah.
And that hum was so clean sounding. And it's, I mean, I don't know. I hope this GoPro is doing us justice. Yeah.
It picks up sound pretty good.
Yeah. This is bone stock. So, I mean, this is...
It's fun to drive.
Yep.
Really fun to drive.
Should Mike get a C4? What do you think, Mike?
Should I? You know, it's been so long since I've driven a C5. The last one I drove, I believe, if you look at my videos, it was probably about a year and a half ago. I drove a C5 Z06, a red one. Obviously, I'm partial to that car. That was my first Corvette. But I've never driven just a normal base model 1997 C5. So I'd have to drive that to compare it to this. I will say that this feels quite a bit different than the 84 C4 that I drove. The 84 C4, for one thing, had like 110 less horsepower. I think it was 220.
84, they were actually 205.
Okay, 205. So even less. So didn't have much horsepower. It handled phenomenal though. Like, you barely touched the steering wheel and it was going, you know, right to left. It had a great sound because he had Flowmaster on it. Yep. So it was super loud, sounded excellent. Obviously the inside on the cluster gauge here was all that digital. Yeah, 80s style, which I actually liked, and they kind of paid homage to in the C7 and the new C8's track modes. Yes. That swoosh style. Yes. They replicated, when you go to track mode in the C7 or C8, they kind of replicated that, what you saw in the 80s, that they went with that that digital, like RPM that readout. Yes. Now with the newer variant, as you see here, it's in the middle. It's in the middle, which is, if you remember, it's actually similar to the C8. If you remember, the C8 got that information cluster in the middle with the info onto the sides, albeit the C8 or the C7, excuse me, is more digital based. This one here, you got an analog. On the for the RPM.
For your RPM and all your readouts here.
Right.
Which is a good setup because it's all there. And this digital cluster here, there's controls, you can switch your fuel reading, your trip, and different levels of your gauges here. So so there was, and again, this was all new at the time. And also we still have a cassette player. We got a tape deck and we have a CD player. So you got both. And as a kid, I loved having the combo because at the time we had both. We had cassettes and we had CDs. So you can just pop them all in. Now everybody's laughing like, wow, just take that out and put a Kenwood in there or something. Yeah, you can. But if you want to keep it classy, that's what you got, you know, so.
But I mean, just a conclusion on this, I definitely really like this car. Like I said, to do a clear comparison between a 96 and a 97, I'd have to drive the 97. But this is a great deal. It's a one owner. It's in excellent condition, especially when they get done doing what they're going to do to it. It's probably going to feel like a brand new, or as new as you can make a 26-year-old car feel. It's going to look, you know, phenomenal. It's only got 19,500 miles on it for a 26-year-old car. I think neighbor Mark used to own this or something.
Yeah, you would think.
It's a garage queen, basically. So very well maintained. So yeah, I mean, whether it is stacking up with a C5 or not, I think it's definitely a car that you should own.
Or you know, the comments will say, hey Mike, buy Robert that car. Yes.
Exactly.
So with that said, if you want this car to be yours, call me or Sue-Ann, and we'll get you squared away. Like I said, the car is going to go through the full mechanical and detail paint correction roundup, and then after that'll be on the floor. But that doesn't mean I still can't take a deposit on it if you want to move on this car once it's ready to go. You know, LT4 C4s are becoming harder and harder and harder to find. Right now we have two. I didn't mention this, but you know, right now we wanted to do a video on it, but I can't get it up from my Houston store. We got a 96 Grand Sport down in my Houston store, a coupe as well. So I've got not one but two 96 LT4 cars, the collector edition and the Grand Sport, both the flagships of 1996. Last year for the C4, second most powerful, potent power plant you can get from that generation, and I got two of them. So let me know, let Sue-Ann know, and we'll hook you up. We'll put you in a beautiful vet.
So ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed the video, give us a big thumbs up, leave comments down below. I hope each and every one of you has a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you guys out on the road.